You're watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates. You're listening to A Pirate's Life for Me on The Sports Objective. Join us every Friday at noon as we catch up with a member of Pirate Nation. Here's your host, Bubba Rosenbaum.
What is going on, Pirate Nation? Welcome into episode 2 of A Pirate's Life for Me. Last week we caught up with John Kazazza, quarterback for the Pirates back in the early 70s, led East Carolina to its first ever win over NC State. And today, very excited to have someone who's been a longtime friend and also very loyal to East Carolina University, for an awfully long time. And welcome into the show, Pat Lane. Pat, we appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Bubba. You and I go back to about when you were probably 5 or 6 years old, I think.
No doubt about it. We definitely go back to the Art Baker years and, an interesting time in East Carolina athletics. And when East Carolina, when the expression or the mantra was going after the best there in the mid to late 80s when we were playing Penn State, Florida State, Miami, West Virginia, South Carolina, all those major 1A independents as they were at the time. And, I know we'll talk about some of that later on. But, before we dive into some of those topics, just tell everyone how you wound up at East Carolina. And I know you initially went to Catawba College.
I was. Graduated from Rocky Mount Senior High in 1963. East Carolina was right down the road, but I just never really had that much interest. I wanted to be an accounting major. Catawba had a pretty good program, so I went there as a freshman. I met a young woman there. We actually got engaged. She flunked out, and she went back home to Wilmington, and I decided I'd get closer, so I transferred to ECU as a sophomore.
So once you made that decision to become a Pirate, it was obviously on the athletic side, during the Clarence Stasovich years. So talk about what it was like back then, from an athletic standpoint. Coach Stass had so much success at Orion and Hickory, and then he brought that success to East Carolina.
Yeah, Stass was the head football coach and AD during my entire 3 years. Just to show you where we were and where we've come, ECU's first home game that I attended as a sophomore was against Catawba. So that was Stass and the single wing and playing Catawba College. Second year of the stadium, so only one side was there. You can actually look at the south side and see where the original stadium was, because there's still 2 walls that go beside the original sections, separating it from the new ones. Stass, he was old when he got there. He kind of knew what he was doing. He was very much a gentlemanly type. And he improved ECU quite a bit during his time, particularly as the head football coach, and seemed to be a solid AD. I was too young to know a good one from a bad one back in those days.
And I'm trying to recall the specific seasons right off the top of my head. I don't have the information in front of me, but I want to say it was maybe 63, 64, 65, but there were 3 consecutive years that the Pirates went 9-1.
I believe you're right, and played in the Tangerine Bowl down in Florida at least one of those years. And there was another bowl game. I don't remember the name of it. So that's success any way you want to measure it.
No doubt. And then obviously on the college side at the time, and because it was East Carolina College, talk about Leo Jenkins. Leo Jenkins, such a legend at East Carolina, and the university status, the med school, so many things. talk about Leo.
Yeah, Leo was a unique individual and probably one of the strongest leaders that I've encountered through my entire adult life. Um, I, he always entertained legislators at football games. So one of the things that always happened when the band wrapped up the halftime, they got ready to play the fight song. They spelled out ECC. They played the fight song and they changed the last C to a U. So if you were a supporting legislature, you cheered, and if you weren't so sure, you might have felt a little uncomfortable there.
Awesome story. I actually had not heard that. It does not surprise me. I had been exposed to some of the other tactics, and there's an excellent video, some snippets of different comments and so forth that Chancellor Jenkins had made. And man, it just gives you chills, not even knowing the man, just because East Carolina means so much to me, to hear those words that he spoke all those years ago.
Yes, in fact, I would really suggest that younger pirates give themselves a copy of East Carolina, The Formative Years, and the author, who was an ECU professor, will take you step by step through the fight to get university status in the med school and how he battled with the News and Observer. It's quite an education of how to accomplish something when you're the underdog, but you develop some good strategy and tactics, and you can pull them off. And he did.
I wholeheartedly agree with you on that should be something that all East Carolina students need to read as a freshman, and just learn the background and why East Carolina, not only its athletics teams that are like we'll talk about, really the front porch of the university, and that's something I know Chancellor Jenkins really believed wholeheartedly in the establishment of the football program to what it became and has become. But then not only that, but just on the university side, that's why the chip on the shoulder mentality exists.
Well, there's no doubt. And again, people that have been around a good long while, like me, it inspired us because we were kind of a redheaded stepchild, but it did inspire us. And Mike Bunning got me to join the Pirate Club, I think maybe in, I don't know, 70 or 71. And he was a great supporter of East Carolina. So those of us who went through those years, we got it. We understood it. We had seen Dr. Jenkins lead and have success. So it was pretty easy to jump on the bandwagon and do what you could. I think Pirate Club minimum membership in those days was $25.
Now, as far as Chancellor Jenkins, specifically, the fight for the medical school, that's one of the quotes that I love when you hear Chancellor Jenkins say, "Is that something that you'd be proud of? Would you be proud to tell your grandchild that one day?" Some of those, I mean, man, just his tactics, and he found a way to get it done.
He did, and that is you just cited a great example. So he knew how to paint people into a corner that were opposing both the university status and the med school.
And then several years later, and we'll dive into this down the road in the conversation, but obviously, the dental school and a lot of other things, and what East Carolina University has become, going from a regional, teachers college to everything that it is today, was a major research university. But, kind of transitioning back to the athletic side, take us back there, during your time as a student, but then also right after you were a grad. I know what are your memories of that 1970 plane crash when the 75 Marshall Thundering Herd travel party, perished on the way back to Huntington?
Yep, I was at the game. I was at a professor's house after the game, celebrating the victory, and lo and behold, I guess somebody called or they had a TV on and announced the crash. So, you watch those people play football a few hours before that, and then they're all gone. Pretty chilling thing.
No doubt. And in the open, I talked about having John Cazazza on. John, of course, was on that team, and having played against those guys, he just said, it was very hard, here 50 years later for him to talk about it.
Yeah, I can imagine if you actually had been on the field with those people, that had to be really heartbreaking for probably each East Carolina player.
And that's something, not to get off on a tangent, but Pirate fans, if you ever go to an East Carolina game or you're in Huntington, or if you're just passing through, I urge you to check out the fountain, go to the Spring Hill Cemetery, and check out the monument and memorial there. And it's something that I had the opportunity to do on a couple occasions. And back when East Carolina played Marshall in 2007, and there was actually a couple members of that team who had not traveled to the game that were there that day, and that was really, kind of sent chills up your spine just thinking about that.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Mike Hamrick was on that team and did not travel with the team to that game.
Yeah, I know. I knew, of course, that Mike Hamrick had been, or not had been, but is a Marshall alum, and obviously went back several years later to be the AD after he'd been the AD at East Carolina. So he's seen both sides of that rivalry. But during the 70s, Sonny Randall, those years, and then also Pat Dye, what are some of your top memories from what was a very successful decade for Pirate football?
Yeah, so Sonny, I think, went 9-2 in both of his years. We lost the state and Carolina as the two losses each of those seasons, as I recall. So that's, again, success. He was a first-time coach. UVA hired him as their coach after the 2 years at East Carolina because he was a UVA alum. By quirk of the schedule, ECU went to UVA to play football in either his first or maybe it was his second year there. And I think the score was ECU 63, Virginia 10. He didn't last very long as the coach at UVA after that.
As you take a look back at that Apples versus Oranges game, one of the stories I really enjoyed about that 61-10 victory for the Pirates over Virginia was hearing about the exchange between Pat Dye and Sonny Randall on the field before the game. Sonny Randall said, Pat, we'll take it easy on you, or something like that. And then Coach Dye said, well, do whatever you need to do, Sonny.
When Dye came, of course, he brought the wishbone from Alabama, and nobody up here had ever seen anything like that. So, my best memory in maybe his first year or one of his early years, we were playing state in Raleigh. Leander Green was a sophomore quarterback. I was sitting down near one of the end zones. First play of the game, Leander rolled out to the left, faked the pitch out, turned up the field, and it was an 80-yard touchdown run. And the state people were like, what happened there? What did he do? So, those were interesting times as Pat Dye kind of snuck up on people there in this area.
Full disclosure for our listeners and viewers, I was born in 1981, but I've heard this story time and again from yourself my dad and others. That was about the season finale between East Carolina and William and Mary sometime there in the late 70s. The Pirates were playing for a Peach Bowl bid. Very likely that East Carolina may have gone to the Peach Bowl had they won that ball game against the Tribe up in Norfolk in what was called the Oyster Bowl. But what are your memories of former East Carolina football player Jim Johnson coming off the sideline and making a tackle on a William & Mary player as he was headed toward the end zone?
Well, the memory is I think we were playing for a bowl bid and we lost and we didn't get the bid. But the incident you're talking about, again, kind of close to where I was sitting, William & Mary guy was headed for the end zone, and an older ECU fan was standing on the sideline. He leaped out and drilled that guy. It's the only time I think I've ever seen a fan go in a game and hit a player. We had the Southern Miss field goal fiasco, and I think some fans attacked a referee after the game, but that's the only time I've ever seen a fan go on a field and tackle an opposing football player.
Yeah, I can imagine the William and Mary player. Now, was his name Tom Rosance or something? Or maybe it was one of his teammates. But I just remember that name. My dad mentioned that name a lot. Maybe was he the star quarterback for that team?
He was. It was the quarterback running. Yeah.
But since you brought it up on that, I believe it was 1986 game against Southern Miss, and the video is actually on YouTube from when the Pirates played Southern Miss about 20 years later, and Brian Bailey was doing a story for WNCT talking about the tremendous rivalry between the Pirates and Golden Eagles. And like you said, the officials botched it in multiple ways on the game-ending scenario, where Southern Miss threw a Hail Mary. The Golden Eagle receiver rolled on his butt and then made a forward lateral, and we could either take the touchdown because the play resulted in the touchdown. You could either take that result, which is obviously no good, or you could have the penalty assessed, and then you had a chip shot field goal for USM. But they had since changed that rule back not too long after that, where a game could end on a penalty by the offensive team like that.
Yep, that's right.
But just remarkably bad luck and just a lot of hardship down through the years when it came to that Southern Miss series. But what are your memories going back to the late 70s with that Pat Dye team that won the Independence Bowl, and then moving on into the early 80s with the Ed Emery era, and specifically that 1983 team that was so good?
Yeah, it might have been the best team we ever had. And I do remember it. We lost 3 games, and they were to the three big Florida teams. I saw the Florida State game on TV. At the end, we probably got a referee job because I think the quarterback made a long run and his knees hit the ground. He lost the ball. They recovered it, and they said, well, that's a good play. I guess he was down, but we didn't blow the whistle. So then I don't remember much about the Florida game. The Miami game was nip and tuck. We had the last possession, threw the winning touchdown pass into the end zone, and 2 of our receivers ran into each other, and neither one of them caught it. Game over. So that was a great team. And in those days, of course, if you weren't a big boy school, you just weren't going to get a bowl bid, and they did not.
Like you said, that team was on the outside looking in, despite being ranked, I think it was either 20th or 23rd nationally. And in those three losses that you said, coming to Florida State 47-46, and then Florida 24-17. And I know you said you didn't really recall this, but I watched that highlight film so much as a kid. Even though I was 2 years old when it happened, from having watched it, in my later elementary years, I had the thing memorized. And but the pass interference away from the football. So you had Kevin Walker or someone, maybe Clint Harris, that had 3 interceptions on the day, and I think that was the third one, and it was taken back because of a pass interference away from the football on the complete opposite side of the field that the ball was thrown. So just SEC officials, I'm sure, finding a way to save the Gators.
Absolutely.
But kind of moving on, just what are some of your other? There's certain things that come to mind. Not only in football. You think of the Peach Bowl team. You think of that 92-93 basketball team that went to the NCAA tournament. What are some of your other top memories? And then obviously so many good ones in baseball.
Yes, you're absolutely right about baseball. I mean, obviously it was Harrington Field when I was down there, so quite a bit different than what we have today. But we were winning, and I guess we're still the bridesmaid for going to more postseason play in baseball than any other team that's never been to the College World Series. So we had some really good teams, but again, in postseason play, you had to play against the bigger programs. So it always foiled us, unfortunately, and still is. I mean, that was a heartbreak this year because we were a couple of innings away from going to Omaha, and it turned on us, unfortunately. But yeah, I knew Coach Overton quite well. And of course, due to this day, very close to him. He just retired. And then, of course, we had Billy and now Cliff. The good teams kept on going. We just can't seem to get over that hurdle. We get closer and closer, I think, but so far, no cigar.
Yeah, you mentioned Coach O. Obviously, with Coach LeClaire, and then since Coach LeClaire with Coach Godwin, the program has undoubtedly gone to another level. But sometimes it's a little frustrating for some folks to act like East Carolina baseball started in 1998.
Yeah, they need to read their history book a little bit.
But you mentioned Coach O. Obviously just retiring within the last week or so, and talk about not only a tremendous baseball coach, but an even better human being.
Yeah, he's really a great guy. He continued to work for East Carolina after the end of his coaching days. Was very involved with the NCAA as kind of a regional supervisor for postseason play. Of course, has been the color analyst for the radio network for a good many years. I understand that's going to continue, and I hope it does. But you just won't meet a better guy than him. He's really straightforward, really sincere, really loves East Carolina. Just a great guy.
I was really hoping that would be the case. That's awesome to hear about Coach O. And like you said, not only a tremendous coach and analyst, professor, but an even better person. And he's been awesome to us here at the Sports Objective, coming on extra innings multiple times a season to talk East Carolina baseball. So hopefully he will be remaining in the booth alongside Scott Rogers or whoever the play-by-play voice is for Pirate baseball moving forward. Pat, now if we can, let's shift gears a little bit and focus on the East Carolina Pirate Club. The ECU Pirate Club is the fundraising arm of ECU athletics, providing for athletic scholarships as well as other needs of the athletic department. And what are your thoughts on the Pirate Club? Obviously, we had some excellent years in the past, but in recent years, it's been a bit of a struggle. Sure, you've had the losing on the field, but in my opinion, it runs much deeper than that, and wanted to get your thoughts there.
Right now, the single largest financial contributor to ECU athletics is student athletic fees, more than donations, more than ticket sales. And that just can't work. We can't get enough money doing that. So you're right. The membership not only has been stagnant, but it's been in a pretty steady decline for the last decade or so. I think last year we finally kind of stabilized it, but it's under 5,000 people, and that's just not going to get the job done. So the Power Club has its work cut out for it. I wish they were more innovative with some of their strategy and tactics, and I wish they were better communicators with the people who are members, the people who used to be members and for whatever reason dropped, and of course, a lot of young graduates. Unfortunately, if they're real recent graduates, they never saw a winning football team. So, it's a hard sell, but you got to stay connected with those people. You've got to revamp the young graduate program to where it would offer things to current graduates that would be important to them, instead of offering them a season ticket discount when they're moving all over the country and the world with their careers. They're not going to value that unless they stay local. So we really need some innovation there, and it just hasn't been happening.
In 2008, if you dive into some of the specific numbers, just for reference, 83.95 is where the Pirate Club peaked, and during the Terry Holland era, I think when he took over, it was between 6.5 and 7,000, closer to 6.5 back in 2004, and then during his leadership of the athletic department, and then I guess Dennis Young at that time was still in charge of the Pirate Club executive director, and Poltz, and then also Ruffin McNeil. You saw, I guess it was the numbers, anywhere from in the low to mid 7,000s to 8,400.
Yes. And there is a correlation between winning football and Pirate Club membership. There's no doubt about it. But we can't use that as an excuse for the decline over the last decade or so.
And absolutely not. And that's kind of where I was going with that, because a lot of folks will just simply, the easiest thing to do is point to all the losing that had been taking place in football, since 2014. But it's certainly a lot deeper than that. And you think about that 83.95 number, that actually got down. We lost about 4,000 off of that. So what, about a 45% or so decrease?
Yes, and at the same time that we were decreasing, the university has been graduating 6,000 to 7,000 students a year. So our alumni base is rapidly increasing, and our Pirate Club donor base has been on a steady decrease. Something's just not right there.
And as you referenced, I think you have the specific number in front of you. I do not, but I think over about an 8 to 10 year period, what you had, or maybe it's a little bit longer than that, but you had approximately 80,000 degrees and 78 new members.
Right. That's right.
So very, very alarming there, as you said, to be, having so many graduates this year. I think it was at least 6,000, if not 6.5. And, that number, I want to say I've heard a number of about 55 or 5,700 this year. Last year, it was just shy of 5,000, maybe 49 something.
I believe that's correct.
So
I keep an Excel spreadsheet on this very subject. It goes back about 20 years or so. So if anybody is really interested in seeing the actual numbers, they should get in touch with me. I'll be glad to share it with them.
certainly appreciate you doing that, because I was aware of some of those numbers, but yeah, it's pretty alarming when you can look at everything and see the negative trend. But unfortunately, things are trending back up. But certainly a lot of work that still remains to be done if we want to accomplish what we seek to accomplish. Kind of along those same lines, major capital campaigns. You've certainly seen and taken part. Been a very generous donor to a number of those. Most recently, the Pirates Unite campaign, and I know you're also a major donor to the Clark LeClaire Stadium project. Back in, I guess, 2003, 2004.
Yeah, I think we gave them, I want to say $25,000. It was enough for us to have one of the little plaques on the side of the wall. So certainly not the Clark's plaque, but yeah, we met with Coach LeClaire and we really liked what he was doing. We knew we had to have another stadium. So we've always tried to do what we can on pretty much every capital campaign. We've already made our gift to the Pirates Unite campaign. We made it actually in December before the campaign officially began. So again, we try to do that. We do the same on the academic side. We're strong supporters of the EC Scholars Program within the Honors College, the College of Education, and the College of Fine Arts and Communications. People ask me, well, what are you doing? You graduated from business, you're not giving them money. I have nothing against them. They educated me to pass all the parts of the CPA exam in my first try. But I guess I feel like they have some fundraising advantages that those other parts of the university don't have. And we also think that EC Scholars and the Honors College is the greatest marketing school tactic that the university has on the academic side. So we really want to support that as much as we can. Lynn actually is the chairman of the Advancement Council of the Honors College.
That's kind of where I was going, because obviously Lynn is actually an alum of Greensboro, correct?
Greensboro College. That's
Greensboro
correct.
College. And so I know both at her alma mater as well as basically her honorary alma mater, if you will, with East Carolina, you guys are not only very involved financially, but also on the various committees. So talk about, some of those experiences down through the years and the opportunity to have such a leadership role there.
Yeah, the opportunity is that ECU has a lot of needs. It's really been quite the university in terms of academic development. I think something in excess of 40% of undergraduates now are STEM students, so science, technology, medicine, so it's really changed. And things, again, like the Honors College and the EC Scholars, it's funny, our acceptance rate is still very high, but the quality of our students has gone up because of things like the STEM, for instance. We're educating people in the areas where they can have a good career and have good earnings for their family and remember to give back to ECU. So a lot of good things are happening. We're always going to be behind Chapel Hill and NC State in terms of legislative support. We've not, our alumni until probably the last decade or two have been more teachers type, nurses. Didn't make a lot of money, but the College of Business and the STEM is changing all that, as Brody and the School of Dental Medicine. So we've made a lot of progress. One of the things we get out of doing what we do on the academic side, we get to interact with a lot of students, and they impress me every day. Just as when we now interview football players, their conversation skills are right up there with anybody. It's a radical change. It's a great improvement. I think our coaches like Cliff and Coach Houston have the right priorities there off the playing surface, and we're seeing it. So, it's a lot of encouraging stuff, but it's all about the students. ECU scores very highly on what's called upward mobility, and that means improving people's life, maybe coming from a lesser background to a very successful career. We do a lot of that. It's being recognized nationally. It's a great thing.
Pat, as you take a look at East Carolina, it was, of course, founded in 1907 as a teacher's training school. It became East Carolina Teachers College, then ECC, and then ECU. But despite the tremendous growth over the years, talk about the way that original mission still exists.
Sometimes we're penalized for that because it's kind of regional in nature. And while we're a major university, when you're perceived as regional, it's a step below the peer group that we really, really ought to be recognized as being part of.
And that's something that has certainly come up as far as the different tiers when conference reaffiliation and conference expansion is taking place.
Yes, there's basically R1 and R2, meaning two categories of high research universities. We're in the second group. I do have it from a really good source who works at ECU and is nationally connected. You might guess who that is. That actually the distinction between R1 and R2 is in the process of being eliminated. So if you're a high research university, you will be an R. But I don't have a timetable for that happening.
Certainly be on the lookout for that. Appreciate a little breaking news perhaps there. But kind of looking into your crystal ball, obviously you're very plugged in both on the athletic side as well as the academic side. Talk about some of the things that you see that we really need to hone in on and maybe make our focus as we move into the next decade or so.
Well, I think across the country, 18-year-olds population is going down. So everybody is hustling to try to increase, at least maintain their enrollment. One of the things actually that Greensboro College has done, and NC State, so huge public, small private, is starting to focus on, I guess, what are called certifications. So maybe not necessarily meaning all of our students need to go through a 4-year degree program, but having more job direct related certificates available so that the non-traditional student or the person who wants to learn about HVAC or auto mechanics or, actually could get that kind of education through ECU. There's nothing that prevents us from doing it. People probably say, well, that's what community colleges are for. Well, that certainly is something that community colleges do, but probably I taught in community colleges for a few years when Len and I moved back from New York City. So I know a lot about that, and being taught at a four-year university, those same life skills probably is being delivered by a better educator than the typical educator in a community college. So they're all teaching the same subject, but one is teaching it as a four-year university professor or instructor, and while the others, are typically adjunct professors, meaning part-time. They're not really even full-time professors often in community colleges. I'm an example. I taught there, but I was an adjunct because I don't have a PhD or whatever. MBAs as far as I got. So I think we've got to sharpen our academic offering, be creative about that, so that we appeal to maybe a bit of a broader mix of student, not just the traditional 18-year-old high school grad. And I believe, again, from a really good source, that we're doing that.
Well, Pat, we certainly appreciate your time this afternoon. Some excellent perspective, as we take a look at a variety of topics. But I think the good news as East Carolina University continues to grow, both on the academic side and the athletic side, that we have some solid leadership, and that's something that's certainly tremendously important, and that goes without saying. And as you take a look at the athletics leadership, I feel very confident about the three coaches that we have right now in the so-called major sports, or the big three, if you will, on the athletic side. But not only that, I think if you look at some of our Olympic sports coaches, I really like what we have there as well.
Well, I agree. We may have the trifecta, in football, men's basketball, and baseball, and we have not had that at one time very often in our history. Had good coaches in the various sports, but not all at the same time.
Pat, once again, we really appreciate your time this afternoon. We have hit on a lot of topics and really appreciate your perspective on those, and taking a trip down memory lane as well. As you know, when the two of us get together, we could talk for hours about ECU athletics and just ECU in general. But we'll certainly have you back on in the future to talk all things East Carolina University. And we look forward to seeing you throughout the fall at Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium. Do you have any final thoughts for Pirate Nation?
Well, thank you. Always glad to talk to fellow Pirates. And my message would always be, do what you can. Do what your finances allow. Or if you don't, your finances maybe won't allow, see if there's a way for you to give some time to the university. If we're around 200,000 alums now, and if everybody would do a little bit of what they could, it would really be helpful.
Well, Pirate Nation, there you have episode 2 of A Pirate's Life for Me, as we caught up with East Carolina University alum and donor for more than 4 decades, Pat Lane. We really appreciate his time. Be sure to follow us on social media, on Twitter and TikTok at TheSportsOBJ, on Instagram at The Sports Objective. Like and follow our Facebook page, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. As always, we really appreciate you tuning into the show, and we'll talk to you next Friday on A Pirate's Life for Me. And as always, go Pirates!